Hey, Verified News community. Brittany Harlow here. I am the lead journalist and director at VNN. Here we are for another riveting rendition of VNN Live. Lots going on. This is the first time I've worn a shirt that wasn't black. And the significance of that is that um, I always wanted to um, kind of have some continuity with these. And today it was just a mess. It was a big mess of a day. So I can't wait to tell you all about it. But if you're new, again, Brittany Harlow. I am one of the founders of Verified News Network. We are an independent local news organization that brings independent journalists and news orgs from all over the country together to tell stories that would otherwise go untold. So I always like to open this up with the opportunity, and I hope you guys can hear me okay with my mic here. Um, Let me know what you like out of our VNN lives, what you like out of our network, what you want to talk about. Weigh in as we're talking about it here live. I'm keeping my eyes on the comments here on the YouTube channel. You can also email me at bharlow@verifiednews.network up on the screen there. Um, it's so important what we do as far as our audience building and getting our stories to more people. That's why the biggest way that you can help us out right now is to subscribe. You do that by going to verifiednews.network, drop in your email address. We send you news updates on the stories we're working on, the different projects we got going, along with some media information. I'm going to go ahead and check my stream there. All right, looking good. Awesome. So yeah, give and again, be a part of this conversation as we're talking tonight. The topic, mysteries and investigations. They are my passion, and they are also very hard to do, and they take a lot of time. And I'm going to be jumping into a couple of those here in a minute. Let's take a look at our app this week. We just dropped a new story today about Promised Land, which is a series that the project we're working on with Oklahoma Media Center, the OMC for short. A story from OSBI, Tulsa, City of Tulsa. This is a story that we just dropped today. Beneath that, the Friedman story, the first kind of official story that we have done on this topic. And you can watch the video. Uh, in fact, how we got in touch and even found out about this big issue, really, and this huge untold history was through an educational session that I attended through the OMC, that media collaborative that I told you about. So really check it out. It opened my eyes to a lot of things that I didn't know about as far as, Native Americans in Indian country before statehood, while slavery still existed, owning slaves. Some came over on the Trail of Tears. We're going to do a lot of more coverage about that in the future and different aspects of that untold history. But something else, if you caught it this week, was the Bass Reeves coverage that we kind of stumbled upon doing our Friedman coverage. We found out the cemetery has been abandoned, and that potentially Bass Reeves, hero of the South. Sure, a lot of people have heard about him. I only actually heard about him recently, even though there's been like a whole bunch of TV shows and movies done about him, and even more in the works right now. But the fact that he could be buried in this cemetery along with these other historical figures, and the cemetery is really in rough shape. I wish that I had and you can go into that story, and I actually went there and took a bunch of photos about 40 photos actually, and they couldn't even tell the true story. Those were just the graves that like were literally right there in the open, in addition to all the wild that had taken over in this cemetery. But it's estimated between 200 and 1,000 people are buried there, and it's really actually very sad to see how neglected this historical cemetery has become. And I've been working with a group to try to track down the owners so that we can do a cleanup, help them out. And this story just got so wild. I was not even planning on doing a story on what I found out about this cemetery, but unfortunately, I can't not do a follow up story on the history of the property of the ownership of this cemetery because it is insane uh, who owns the cemetery, how they got into it, what they're doing with it now. Um, you know, the attempts to contact these people that own the cemetery. It's private property, but there's a lot about the cemetery that is not known to the public that I can't wait to tell people. And some of it, honestly, I'm going to the DA's office in the morning to talk about what can be done about this. If there's been anything not right about this situation other than the cemetery being like severely neglected and let go to ruin. Essentially, like I went out there and it was creepy, um, but it's just so. And I mean, it was kind of spooky, like being out there amongst all those graves, with it being so wild, and it's really hard to get in and out of. And so, kind of as I was there, I was like, "Wow, I've watched a lot of scary movies in my time. I'm now in a cemetery that's incredibly hard to get out of just because, if there's any kind of, um, you know, spiritual beings that didn't want me there, it would not be very hard to trap me in there because I was like, man, I literally had to cut my way through overgrowth with a pair of hedge clippers to get in there. And I was like, I only cut myself a little bit. And there is between, like I said, up to 1,000 people buried there. So you can imagine just how massive this land was. And I was like, man, whew. But it was also like kind of like peaceful in a way. Like I can't describe it. Like the people there that are buried there, if you believe in that kind of thing, that spirits still hang around cemeteries. It was um, like I wasn't unwelcome, if that makes sense. Like Uh, but and I would imagine that because people that have ancestors there, that are related to people that were buried there, haven't been able to go up there and visit, haven't been able to pay their respects, haven't been able to, have that connection, and so that's a really big reason why I got involved. But I can't stress how hard it is to continue to do these stories with with not very much funding. As a news startup, we don't have a lot of funding right now, and so I actually do like a lot of media work to raise funds to do this news coverage. But from this coverage and the April Wilkins coverage, those are two huge investigative pieces that we are really trying to get funding from. So, like I said, you can really help us grow um, that coverage by donating, going to our campaigns page, donating to one of those areas of coverage, signing up for a paid subscription through our Substack, just donating to anything you donate goes to producing and promoting these stories to grow our audiences. And so that is one of the biggest asks that I could say, just aside from just signing up for our email list to help grow our audience and get more viewership on the news that we're creating. I got to be totally honest. I loved being an investigative reporter in TV news back like my history. I worked in news radio for a year, and then I worked in television news for 3 years. And investigative journalism was my favorite. Um, but even like in that setting, not a lot of opportunity to do in-depth series and stuff like we do now, and I love it. And they're important stories that are helping a lot of people. But unfortunately, I am, no matter how much I love it or enjoy it, I'm gonna have to dial that down and and work on the projects that are actually being funded. So we have a couple different projects right now. One of them is being a new online training center that we're really hoping that we get the opportunity to build, because that's going to really be a time saver for me. With I spend a lot of time with our local journalists across the country answering their questions and training and helping them, generate revenue for themselves. But this would be an online system that would streamline everything, not everything, that because I would still like work on one, but would really answer a lot of those questions, give a lot of demonstration and information about how to utilize the network the way that I utilize the network to support myself and to support my news, because I do a lot of stuff on the business side too that takes away from the journalism that I love to do and help people in our communities through news, which is why I essentially do this and continue to do this. We do have a couple of specific projects that are still focused in this coverage area, helping underrepresented communities. I believe that the Freedman coverage and the aspect of this facet of our community voices is something that we're trying to get funded in particular. And then of course the April Wilkins stories. If you're not familiar, all you have to do, I'm gonna pop back into this app for a second. You go to app.verifiednews.network. That's our app, where you can just go to our homepage and click take me to the news feed. And you go to search. You just type in April Wilkins. And there you have it. This one's the last one that we did. The Lone Crusaders is about the blog that was started by April Wilkins' niece. We have the Why Didn't She Stay Away story, which if you read that, you'll know that she did stay away or tried to, from the man that stalked her and terrorized her. But if you're very unfamiliar with this case, 2 decades later, a woman sentenced to life for killing her abuser still fights for freedom. It's essentially the gist of it. She is still in prison right now. The latest on that is that she lost her request to have a parole hearing this year, even though in the past that she hasn't. And of course, the biggest story there, aside from that story itself, is the fact that no other media in the state of Oklahoma will report on it. We've sent it to Tulsa media. We've sent it to OKC media. Like, this is a crazy story that needs more coverage. This woman has been able to have parole hearings in the past. She's only eligible every 3 years, and now she's not even going to be able to get a parole hearing this year, suddenly out of nowhere. The DA keeps protesting it here, saying that she should be in jail for like or in prison for another 17 years because she's a danger to society, or she's like a threat to public safety, where what she did was kill her personal rapist and abuser. So to me, it's like, I mean, yeah, I guess she's a proven safety threat to rapists and abusers, but is that a reason to keep someone in prison? And particularly, it's not like she's a vigilante that is going out attacking men who attack women. Like, this was someone who had beaten and raped her that night. That evidence backed it up in the court, uh, and was presented in court. But I mean, that's a big story that I encourage you to look into if you haven't already, and something that we're trying to get coverage for. But again, you have to dial the investigations, and I'm still going to be reporting on them, but the funding does not allow for how much I want to do journalism and investigative report writing now. And we have a couple programs that we're enrolled in currently. We're about to kick off a huge fundraiser here pretty soon, I say a couple of weeks, and then we'll be unleashing that. Just, cross your fingers, say a prayer, send us some good vibes so we get some of these fellowships and some of these grants, because that's what's going to be funding our news in this space, these underserved communities. That's really all I had to say tonight. But thank you so much for tuning in to VNN Live. Please give me your comments. I'm going to throw it up in the screen here in a second about the different ways that you can get in touch. And we'd love to get your feedback on the coverage that you want to see and how else we can serve you. So thanks, guys. Have a great night.